Good morning, Pre-Med Takeovers. I'm Devon. Last year, I graduated from Loyola University Chicago with a Bachelor of Science in Biology and a minor in Bioethics. And I just applied to PA schools this past cycle, so I actually got accepted back in December, and I will be starting in less than 2 months. So when I went into Loyola as a freshman, I actually started off pre-med. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, didn't know much else about any other health professions, and then a couple years later, around between my sophomore and junior year, I found out about the PA profession, and I started looking a lot more into it, shadowed PAs, and realized that's what I want to do. But there's a ton more that went into my decision to become a PA, which I'll speak on a little bit later. I just want to do a quick bio of myself right now. As you might know, healthcare experience is a huge component of the PA school application, so I got my experience by being a CNA and a physical therapy aide. I got my CNA certification the summer between my sophomore and junior year. I believe it was an 8-week expedited course, and then I didn't start working as a CNA until the summer between my junior and senior year, where I started working at a hospital. I worked in downtown Chicago, so it was a little difficult to find jobs around. A lot of the places either wanted you to work full-time or have plenty of experience coming in, and I could do neither of those. I was still a student, and I wanted to work part-time or PRN, which means just as needed. And I also wanted to work at a hospital. I didn't want to work at an assisted living or a senior living home. I just thought that would be more beneficial to me in the long run, becoming a PA, as I would only have this experience as a CNA for about 2 years, hopefully. So it finally did work out. I found myself a job that was PRN. I worked through the school year, and I also worked an on-campus job at my school's gym, so I worked 2 jobs during my senior year. And then come graduation time, I transferred to a hospital that's closer to my hometown. I'm currently living at home right now just to save money before I go to PA. The hospital I originally worked at was part of a healthcare system, so it was super easy to transfer and super convenient now that I'm so close to home. Although I would have loved to stay living in downtown Chicago, I think that the option to transfer hospitals was beneficial to me because I get to see the difference between the two areas. Although my hometown is just an hour outside the city, it is actually a stark difference, I believe, between the patients that I saw back at the hospital in the city versus the one that's here. The city of Chicago gets a bad rep from the news, but it's actually not as unsafe as they make it out to be, as long as you know what you're doing, know where you're going, and what. But some of the patients that I would see at that hospital did actually come in with gunshot wounds, knife wounds, whatever it might be, and that's very different from the ones that I'm seeing here. And I probably should have added that the old hospital I was working at, I was on a med-surg unit, so it was an inpatient unit, and then the unit that I transferred to at this hospital, the unit at this recent hospital is a cardiology unit. So just in itself, there are different patients regardless, but city-wise, they're very different. And since the job at the new hospital was just part-time and I didn't have nearly as many responsibilities as I did in undergrad, I decided to take a new job on as a physical therapy aide. What I learned while applying to that job is that you actually don't need any kind of certifications prior to having that job, so that is a great option for people who don't want to pay to have a certification. And while the majority of my hours were gained as a CNA, some PA schools actually take hours as a physical therapy aide, but make sure you check with the school. Now, during all that time that I was back at home and working the new job, I was actually preparing for the possibility that I might not get into PA school the first time. And so during that time, I was just taking a couple science courses at the community college that's by my house. When you do something like that, that'll boost your GPA the second time around. And so for most medical type professions, whether it's med school, PA school, when you apply, there's both a science GPA and a cumulative GPA. And the hospital that I worked at actually offers tuition assistance, so for part-time, I think they offered me up to $1,200 in a year, so that helped me out a ton. But I was very fortunate, and I got accepted to PA school, so I don't think the classes were a waste. They were fun to take, and then one of them was medical terminology anyway. So if you guys have any questions on what it's like to take a gap year, feel free to send them my way. I knew well ahead of time that I was going to need to take a gap year just for hours. I've been getting some really great questions from some of you guys about gap years, prerequisites, healthcare hours, and stuff like that, so I want to answer some of them on here to benefit you all. Someone asked me about scribe hours, and what I want to add on scribe hours is that a lot of PA schools do not count that as healthcare hours, just because there's not a lot of direct patient contact. That's just the unfortunate reality of it. Some PA schools, however, will accept it, so make sure you look into the PA school. And so I got my certification as a CNA and did my patient care hours that way because I found that basically all PA schools accepted those kind of hours. Some of my daily duties as a CNA were taking vitals, checking blood sugars, removing IVs, removing Foley catheters, a lot of very hands-on stuff.
And part of my duties was also the dirty work. So that was putting people on bedpans, toileting patients, cleaning up people who might be incontinent, so all that stuff.
And then my hours as a physical therapy aide were counted as some schools. You can see why some PA schools wouldn't count it because you're working with PTs and not PA. And so my duties for that job were very different. It's just working with patients who are going through their physical therapy. When the physical therapist doesn't directly have to work with them that second, then I would be the one helping them through their workouts or showing them how to do a proper exercise or even just helping them stretch and whatnot. I've also gotten a couple questions about prerequisites, whether it's med school or PA school, and what I have to say is that they're pretty similar, but PA schools actually require more. So like I said, I started off pre-med, and I was taking the right kind of courses, but then later on decided to be pre-PA, so then I had to change up my course load a little bit. So classes like anatomy and microbiology and other courses that I can't think of right now, they're prereqs for PA school, but not med school. And the justification behind having more prereqs for PA school is basically just PA school is about 2 years, give or take, of just condensed med school. So they want you to be knowledgeable in a bunch of these areas. They don't want to need to teach it to you later because you only get 2 years or so in PA. However, if you are planning on going to med school, I still highly suggest you take anatomy. Find any way to fit it in your schedule. I know a ton of people in med school right now that have both taken anatomy and not taken anatomy prior to med school, and the ones that have taken it say it helps them so much when it comes to their med school anatomy class. So when I decided to become a PA, I learned that I would have to take the GRE instead of the MCAT. However, not all PA schools require the GRE, but most do. So I took the GRE a little over a year ago. It was the January of my senior year that I took it, so I spent all winter break just studying for it. I didn't want to have to worry about studying for the GRE while also studying for my classes, so that's why I did it all over winter break and then took the GRE on like the last day of my break. I did not take a class to study for the GRE. I just used a Kaplan book that had a bunch of practice quizzes and tests, and there was a bunch of things that were online that came with the practice book. So online exams and quizzes will be your biggest help for the GRE. Obviously, I had to pay to get my study book and all the practice tests that came with it, but I know the ETS website offers 2 for free. Back at home, I actually live on a farm, so I'm going to let the horses out right now. And as you can see, all of the Chicagoland area is covered in snow. And last summer, I helped to deliver a baby goat, so I'm like falling in the snow. And that story actually ended up coming up a couple times during my interview. Yeah, it came up during a couple of my interviews, so I was actually asked more often, why not become a vet? Why do you want to be a PA? Rather than the other questions of why PA over MD or why PA over NP, stuff like that. When I was in high school, I actually shadowed a vet a couple times, and on one time I saw a Chihuahua get neutered, and I realized it wasn't for me. Now, I absolutely love learning about surgical procedures. I love watching surgery, so it wasn't the surgery itself that turned me off. It was just, I guess, the scope of the practice. When you work in medicine, and with humans particularly, there's a bigger scope of practice. Obviously, a lot more specialties. Vets don't necessarily specialize. There's obviously large animal vets, and then smaller animal vets, and then maybe they might have a specialized surgery that they prefer. And so I just realized that working with animals and caring for animals is more of a hobby of mine. I absolutely love animals, but I just didn't see it as a career. So I've been getting a couple questions about CASPA, and I want to show you guys CASPA, but my computer has been doing that for the past 10 minutes. Okay, it is barely working on my iPad, but still working. So this is what the homepage of the CASPA application looks like when you're logged in. So under that personal information tab that was in the upper left, it's all just your basic demographic information, where you come from and stuff like that. And then under academic history, that's where you'll add your colleges attended and then all of your classes and grades from your college. Your high school, it is just literally the school. And then under standardized tests, that's where you would enter your GRE score. You have to send it through the website as well. And then if you take the MCAT, some schools will accept the MCAT, but I've found very few. And then if English is not your first language, you have to take this test. And then under the supporting information tab, you will find the evaluations. And that's where you can send out the invites for people to put in their letters of rec. CASPA lets you upload 5 letters of recommendation, although most PA schools only require 3, but an extra 2 might help. The ones that PA schools require will typically be from a professor, a PA that you likely shadowed, and then a supervisor at work. So I got my letters of recommendation from my math professor that I took for 4 classes with actually, a PA that I did shadow, and then one of my nursing supervisors. So those were the required ones, and then I just decided that I wanted an extra one, so I asked one of my advisors for my sorority to write me one. So the other things under supporting information, you will add your personal statement here under essay, any certifications that you have, like a CNA certification, any membership. And then here under experiences, you will list all of your work experiences, volunteer experiences, groups and organizations, and all things like that. And this is probably a good time to tell you guys that this is the PA school I will be attending. So under the sections completed, you can go through all these tabs for each individual. And it shows in the sidebar that this is for each individual school. You have to enter in what classes you have as prerequisites that satisfy there. And then sometimes schools will have supplemental questions, if I can select that. So this one had one, it was an optional one. Other schools will send you links to a supplemental application. Also, if you guys are planning on applying to PA school this upcoming cycle, make sure that you are at least thinking about or planning your personal statement right now. I spent at least a month working on mine, and what I actually found most difficult was fitting everything that I wanted to say into 5,000 characters or less. 5,000 characters really isn't that much, and there was so much more I wanted to say, so I actually ended up writing, if it'll focus, 4,993. And now that I have my iPad working, this is probably a good time to tell you guys that I have a YouTube channel called The Beautiful PA Life, where I've started making videos. I've been making videos that are both focused on becoming a PA student, and then it's also a bit of a lifestyle video log. I'm planning on coming out with a ton more videos on PA school stuff, but I have one right now on what to wear to the PA school interview and how to ace the PA school interview. I am always open to suggestions on video topics, so if you have any, feel free to shoot them my way, and I will be happy to hopefully do them in the future. Someone just asked me how many PA schools I applied to, and if I remember correctly, I think it was around 15. So I spent a lot of time and money on that. I really wanted to maximize my options and hopefully not have to apply a second time, so I applied myself all over the country. And like I said earlier, I'm from the Chicagoland area, but I will be going to school out in Utah, so I'm excited to move out there next month. I've been getting some more questions to elaborate on why I chose the PA profession, so a big deal of that started when I shadowed a surgery a couple years ago. I wasn't there to shadow the surgeon or the PA necessarily, I just wanted to see a surgery. So when I was there, it was the surgeon and then the first assist across the table. And I thought that the first assist might either be a younger physician or a resident, but I was surprised to find out that it was actually a PA. And the PA was extremely utilized in that surgery, and since I've always been very interested in surgery, that prompted me to look a lot more into the PA profession. And when I researched it a lot more, I discovered that PAs have lateral mobility, so what that means is that you do not commit to a residency like a physician would. Rather, you just go straight into work in whatever field you choose, and if you decide to want to do a different field later, you are able to change without having to do another residency. And then, obviously, the time in school was a big factor. The amount of which you'll be paying for school played into it, and just overall quality of life. And now, I'm not trying to say that doctors don't enjoy their life, but I have just heard from so many PAs that I've spoken with that they greatly enjoy the work-life balance. Alright everyone, I'm back now, and I've been getting a couple questions about poor grades on transcripts and applying to med school or PA school with that. And so I have a couple stories for you guys that'll hopefully lift your spirits. So let me start off by saying that a bad grade is not the end of the world. But as I'm speaking on bad grades, I want to make a point that when I say it's okay, I'm saying that you don't want to have a whole handful of poor grades. That having one C on your transcript or maybe one failed grade will be okay. Just make sure that you retake that class in the future and do well on it. So story time for you all. The first time I took genetics, actually, I took it with another 15 credits of all math and science, and I got a C the first time. So a year and a half later, the first semester of my senior year, I retook genetics and I earned an A in the class. PA schools and med schools, they want to see an upward trend in your grades. So that means that your grades later on in college are much better than they were when you started. Now, if you do have a poor grade on your transcript, like I said, make sure you retake the course and do better, but also be able to explain why you got the grade that you did. And a second story for you guys, I have a friend who, his very first semester of freshman year, failed Chemistry 101. Granted, he retook the class, earned an A, and did incredibly well in all of his other classes. I think he still ended up having like a 3.9 GPA. And now that guy goes to Georgetown for medical school. So just want to prove to you guys that there is not lost hope if you do badly in one class. So just make sure that poor grade is just an isolated incident. Don't have a whole handful of poor grades because then you kind of dig a deeper hole for yourself. Alright everyone, I am about to check out for the night. I will leave my social media handles in just a second if you guys ever have any more questions in the future. And I'll leave you guys a good email too in case you ever want to send me a personal statement to edit in the future. I am very noticeable of all grammar mistakes, so I'll be great to edit essays.